So you mentioned growing up in LA. Were you just born there? Were you raised there too? What was that like?
Yeah, I was born and raised in LA, West Hollywood,
Nice,
Gardner
not
Street.
too far from here.
Deep in 18th Street territory at the time. It was a big Mexican gang area, Gardner and Santa Monica.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a different time then. Even the gangs, they weren't shooting. It was, you get in a fist fight here and there. And, used to go to Gardner Street Elementary School up there by Sunset and Gardner. Could walk to school, walk back. You used to ride your bike around, and if you fell down, the neighbor's mom would patch you up.
Different
now
times.
You don't see that anymore.
I don't know who the neighbor's mom is.
Yeah.
I've never seen that one.
They patch you up and bring you an ice cream and
Yeah.
send you home with an ice thing, and your mom never even worried about that. Now it's a different world.
Yeah, it's completely different. So, growing up in LA, were you always this kind of like very entrepreneurial personality, even as a kid, where you were always like, did you kind of have that hustler spirit when you were young too, or did that develop when you were older?
Well, money, when you grow up, there's all kinds of Jews, but we grew up the poor kind. Mom and dad were divorced. Mom was going to school at night, holding down 2 jobs, and she was taking care of her mother, who was, a Holocaust survivor coming over after World War II. My mom was actually a refugee and then a legal immigrant into America in her teenage years, and she was raising 2 boys, and, my dad did what he could, but there's never enough money to go around, right?
That's tough.
And so, you get a nose for it pretty quickly. And I was always after it. I didn't think of it as being entrepreneurial. I just thought about it as first I wanted my box of Topps baseball cards. And then, then it became other things after that.
You just got to figure out, how am I going to get this when my parents aren't giving me the money?
Yeah, or your parents don't have the money.
Uh-huh.
And intellectually you understand even at a young age that your parents are, especially my mom was like breaking her back for me and my brother, and it's tough, and you get that, you understand that, and it's hard to look away from opportunities where money can be made because you're not considering consequence yet in your teenage years.
I didn't form, any sort of consideration for consequence until probably 20. So.
Yeah, and even once you do, sometimes, hey, you got to be able to judge the risk analysis of it too, right? And sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, but you got to be responsible to handle the consequences of the choices that you make. And I
100%.
noticed that that's happening less and less in the world today.
Yeah, it's a different time, dude.
Yeah.
It's just a different time entirely. So one of the things that I remember we spoke about over the phone before we actually met and started filming today is you mentioned that you weren't ever a drug addict, which surprised me, being someone that was so deep into the business like that. In my head, I was never a drug dealer, so obviously I don't know, but I'd imagine in my head that people in that business would do a lot of drugs, But did you ever experiment when you were younger?
Yeah, I experimented with drugs. I always tell people I got really lucky because weed was my drug of choice.
Nice.
Had it been, cocaine or heroin or whatever, maybe I wouldn't be able to say that. But everything that I tried, I just kept coming back to weed. And I've always been able to get off weed if I had to study something, if I had to. And I've always been able to function on weed. For example, I smoked weed the whole time I was in prison. And then the drug program came where you gotta, you can't get a dirty test or you're not going to get that year off. And I quit a year before the drug program.
Nice.
Did the drug program, came home, didn't smoke the whole time I was on parole for another 3 years.
They got absolutely fried.
Yeah, and then, absolutely. And then, you go through phases, bro. Like weed is a funny thing in the sense, the more you smoke it, right, the more it takes, like any drug. Then you get off it for a while, and then you're a lightweight again. So it's cyclical, know? And as you get older, you realize, hey, I want to keep that lightweight status as long as I can. So you start, at my age, you start smoking 6, 7 o'clock in the evening instead of 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, even I've noticed I'm slowing down with the morning smoking. I'm a young guy, and it's like, for me, that morning smoking is something I could only do in high school, and I just can't take it anymore. So
I think the best is, the 6, 7 o'clock, you get the evening.
Yes.
And you're not stoned over in the morning when you wake up. I can still make it to the gym, no problem.
Yeah.
If you're smoking at 11, 12 o'clock at night, or you're hitting the joint when you take a piss at 3 in the morning before you go back to bed, you're still going to be high when you wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't carry over well.
Yeah, you're gonna feel groggy the next day for sure. So you dabbled in all the other drugs, or not all the other drugs, but you dabbled in other stuff, and weed was just the only thing that stuck.
Yeah. Listen, I liked ecstasy. I
Yeah.
tried a ton, in the beginning when we were first doing it. You build your connects. Everybody acts like, one thing when I watch all these dudes talking about all the shit they did, I'm like, I don't know what fucking world they're in, because the first drug deal you do is not the same as the 10th drug deal you do.
100%.
Right? The first prices you pay is not the same as quantity prices you get later. And what I notice is everybody who talks about this, they act like they just got dropped in at the top level and they always had the best price and always had the best customers. And there's a lot of fuck-ups. At least for us, there was a lot of mistakes that happened along the way.
It's trial and error. You just got to learn as you do it.
Yeah, and a lot of luck, but the fact is we stuck with it. And, in the beginning, we used to literally have to take the pills to make sure we weren't getting ripped off. And we'd, you'd be in Amsterdam for a week taking
Fucking
3-4
lit.
different pills. You're lit. You came, but then you learn how to, we learned how to do it by, the Dutch always just used to scrape it on their teeth. Any pill, scrape it on their teeth. And they'd tell you if it was good or bad, right? And then after a while, we learned how to do that. Like, I was a little bit better at it than Tamer, but he could do the same. You could scrape it on your teeth, and you could tell. Hey, within 5 milligrams, this one's got 85 milligrams of MDMA in it. This one's got, close to 100. And you'd kind of always be right with enough experience, and that was a relief, because then, you didn't have to party there for a week. You could just get down to business.
You just became your own human drug testing kit.
Yeah, and then ultimately you get the better connects once you're buying millions of pills at a time. You get better connects, and then there's a certain amount of trust that comes in to that level of the business. Because when you get to the top level of that business, what happens is the system is what matters, and anything that gets in the way of that system has to be dealt with. It's not like your problem or my problem. It's a system problem now that anybody has, because nothing can stop the money flow.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving cogs in that.
Yeah, the cocaine's got to keep flying to Europe, and the ecstasy's got to keep flying back, and to the point where you don't even do the accounting every transaction anymore. You meet once a month or once every other month with your guy, whoever, and handle it. You go to Marbella or some shit. And, or Cannes, Nice, whatever, south of France. Hey, I'll meet you there for the weekend. You do the accounting, and boom, and it's done. But nothing stops the wheel once you have a wheel going.
So, kind of going back to your early days, before you got to that point where you're doing this bulk, you're in Amsterdam, doing all this crazy stuff. How did you first get into selling drugs from just smoking weed and partying?
Bro, I was at a party in London. And I was just a nobody, but I was at this party, and these dudes, Asian dudes, were passing around cocaine. And it was yellow. And I was like, and they were supposed to be doing shit, And I was like, bro, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? I thought you guys were, running shit. This is garbage, man.
Yeah.
And, bro, they took that real serious. I thought it was, like, kind of just funny, but they took that shit real serious.
Take it personal.
Hey, mate, you're taking the fucking piss. You can do better. And I was like, yeah, sure. I didn't even have a fucking connect. I mean, I knew where to go get blow, but I'd never bought a kilo in my life before.
Yeah, you're buying little personal bags.
So, in the beginning for us, that's how I said, yeah, of course. And I get back to LA. I went over to Beverly and La Cienega, right across the street from the Beverly Center. That used to be called Rexall Drugs, not CVS or Rite Aid, whatever it's called now. And they had like a police car, the little police cars that kids play with, and a fire truck. I bought one of each. I opened them up with a screwdriver, and I put half a kilo in each one. And that was the first kilo of cocaine that I shipped to Europe.
Really?
Yeah, FedEx. I sent it to a friend of mine's house who wasn't home and had a doorman building. I knew that she was out of the country. If you're listening, I still love you, babe. She made it very clear not to say her name in any of this stuff. She's a dear friend of mine and my wife. And actually, we just saw her last year. She had us staying at her flat. It was great. So anyway, I sent it there. She's out of town. I get over there, and the doorman taxed me for 5,000 pounds to get this package, right? So now I got to go to the dudes I'm selling it to. I'm taking an advance of 5,000 is how they calculate it, right? Mm-hmm. So I got fucked all the way around the board, but there was so much margin there that by the time it got home, I'd still made a profit.
Yeah, you were still good.
And then everything from that point on was an optimization process. We understood the FedEx thing, right?
Yeah.
I've explained this a couple times to people. It still actually is to this day. FedEx will not allow, their insurance company will not allow their drivers to participate in a controlled delivery.
Really?
Yeah. So if you're sitting there watching your package arrive and it's your regular driver, it's fine.
And you're good to go.
And even if it's not your regular driver, if they go and continue to deliver more packages, it's fine. If it's not your regular driver, they deliver one package and race off around the block, breaking every fucking traffic law known to man.
Yeah, leave your neighborhood, no other routes left.
And they go to a parking lot, a couple blocks away that's got a bunch of Suburbans and Tahoes, not fine. And we always thought packages were great for that because that package is not fine, but you know what? That package doesn't need bail. That package doesn't have a mouth. So you can sleep at night. And the bail money and the attorney money can be used for re-up.
Yeah, that's staying with you.
Yeah. So never made sense to me, these guys that use humans, because unless they're planning to burn them, which is actually what happens. You meet a lot of mules in prison who, got 5-10 years for being mules, and the minute they got busted, the people who sent them just burnt them.
Just got completely screwed.
Yeah, completely screwed. They never had any intention of taking care of them if anything happened. And most of them never even got their money for taking the trip because they usually don't pay them until they land.
So it's really crazy to me that you say the way you started dealing drugs is you shipped like to Europe immediately. You never really went through a stage of being like a street level drug dealer. You just immediately were like putting kilos in boxes.
Yeah, well, you get a kilo, and which was relatively small compared to what we were doing later. Seems big compared to if people are selling grams, I get it.
100%.
But relative, it was, at that time it was 15 grand. I didn't even have to put up all the money. I had a friend who was selling grams. He used to sell grams all over Hollywood. I mean, $60 a piece. You wanted 3 grams, it was $180. There was no 8-ball discount.
God, it's like double that now.
Yeah, but he never cut it, and it was always, he'd have these clear bags with his name was Simon. I mean, everybody knows. Like, so statute of limitations is long gone. He doesn't live here anymore. Dear friend of mine, he got kidnapped. We could talk about that later in Amsterdam. But that's what he used to do. He used to drive around in his Porsche. He'd have like 8 or 10 grams in his underwear and drive around answering his pager. And as soon as they were gone, he'd just drive home and pick up 8 or 10 more, whatever, 10, 12, whatever number it was, and just be out all night. He moved 2 kilos like that a month.
Damn.
One
by
and
the
a half
gram
sometimes.
too. He was probably killing it.
Killing it.
Yeah.
Killing it, and that's what he did, and that was his thing. And he went, all the celebrity parties, all the Playboy, all the everything. So I went to him, got the first kilo, and. Then we had a bunch of losses after that. I got the first one through, got the second one with 2 kilos through, and then when we started upping it to 10 and 20, I went into pretty big debt because I was an idiot. This is what I mean about learning curve. We were sending what cost $400 back then to send FedEx, right? $500, and you're basically telling them it's worth nothing.
Yeah.
Right? But you're sending it's 20 pounds, 10 keys,
you can't
overnight.
insure it for that real value.
Yeah. And the worst part is we were using other people's accounts. We weren't even paying for these accounts. So there's a box on the air bill that you could just charge taxes to FedEx account. So, we went into huge debt, big problems. But then I figured that out finally. And once we figured that out, it was 2.5 years of smooth sailing, not a single problem on the cocaine side.
Really?
Yeah, and then not one for 2.5 years, and then the ecstasy really had about a 2-year run where there was like literally no problems. And then you know, we lost a couple packages here and there. So some other guys lost packages. Other people who we'd had started trying to do stuff that weren't doing it with us, but just had also tried to do the same kind of thing. You know, they lost a lot of packages, but they didn't have much staying power because they couldn't compete with us on price. Now, I know everybody's going to say, oh, your prices are too high. You're crazy. You know, you're fucking lying. You were buying in quantity and you say you were paying 50 cents and you were selling in quantity for $7, $8, $9, $10 for, you know, 10,000 pills. Well, first of all, let me explain something to you fucking idiots before you start. Between 97 and 2000, you're coming off a period where, one, we had no competition. Two, it was good ecstasy. It was before the Mexicans got a hold of it. Right?
Okay.
So it was coming from Amsterdam. You were getting, you know, 90, 120, 80 to 120 milligrams of methylene 3,4-methylene-doxymethamphetamine with just bonding agent in the pill, no cut, unless the raver guys asked for like speed or whatever, right? Those were the prices then. Then when we got busted in 2000, and the feds even said, taking us off the street is what let the gangs get a hold of it. Mexico starts making the cheap version, and the pills you fuckers think that you were buying for 10 cents, they were garbage, dude. That's why you were getting them for 10 cents. So please, fuck off.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it seems like there's a lot better for the world when you just leave those reliable, high-quality supply chains alone. Because at the end of the day, if you bust the people that are selling the good shit, a million other smaller players are going to jump in and sell bad shit.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, we had that problem. That's why we went to the shaped pills, because we brought in Mitsubishis and Ferraris first, right?
Really?
Everybody knows about those,
Yeah.
right? We brought those in, but those were easy to counterfeit. So then we went to shaped pills, pink pentagons, green triangles, green clovers, white clovers, and then also the embossed instead of imprinted stamps, you know, raised Buddha, raised, you know, we had igloo shapes. It was harder for them. You know, one, they didn't have the pill press that could take those kind of plates, maybe. They were stuck just making round pills with an
doing
impression.
some little garage presses and shit.
Yeah, and for us, it was no big deal. We get it over there, like, okay, you spent 10 grand on a new plate for your press. Who gives a fuck? It wasn't an expense that we cared about.
It's going to pay for itself pretty quick.
Yeah, it wasn't really an expense. It wasn't even something we even considered. Like, that was the other thing. It was so much money that, like, that type of shit, there was never an accounting between me and Tamer for supplies and payroll. And some of it be, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending, you know, who was there and how long they were there. But it was just so much. We never accounted for that.
You're sitting on such a ridiculous amount of money that it didn't really matter.
Yeah,
it was just like, fuck, we're winning.
You're in your 20s and you're stacking millions in cash. You know, and you're looking around at all these dudes who you thought were so cool, right? Like, oh, this guy's got this guy's got that, this guy's got the chicks, this guy goes to the Playboy Mansion, da, da, da. And you think, oh, I'm going to be like that someday. And then you get there and you realize they're all fucking frauds.
Yep.
They're like all the dudes who come on these podcasts and act like they were fucking something, right? Like they're frauds. And the reason why is back then, for 10 grand in 1998 a month, you're spending $4 grand on a badass house in the hills with the pool, like you see on Instagram today. $500 for the baddest Mercedes lease a month.
That's what my apartment in Toyota costs now, dude. That's fucked up, dude. That makes me sad.
Yeah, and then you spend, and if you spend $1,000 at the club, that was huge, because bottle service in my day was they write your name on the bottle and bring it back to you next time you come to the club.
God, bring that back.
Yeah.
We need that again.
And they didn't have these professional fucking chicks in the club who were there just to drink your shit, to run up your tab. They didn't have it. It was also before camera phones and Instagram.
Yep.
So it was a lot more fun, you know, celebrities, everything. Not that I'm a big celebrity fan, but even them, they had a lot more fun.
Yeah. Because you could do stuff and not worry about a camera being pointed at.
Yeah, it was great. It was, you know, in the VIP rooms, a lot more fun, you know, and then that was one of the things I noticed when I came home. You know, you got these pros in there drinking your shit. You can't even talk to anybody. The music's so loud. Yep. It used to be when you went in the VIP room at the Gate or Sunset Room or Key Club or any of these places, Roxbury, you could have a conversation. People sat down, there was a table, drinks, whatever, and sure, everybody was crazy, but it wasn't so loud that you couldn't talk.
Yep. So when you were really kind of climbing up in this drug game and making a lot of money and getting to the point where you literally didn't need to do accounting because you were just doing so great, were you kind of still trying to like not appear so lavish, or were you just balling at that point?
Well, I was balling, but at the same time, I owned a restaurant on Wilshire Boulevard.
Oh, okay.
And a tanning salon in Beverly Hills.
So you had your legitimate business.
Yeah, like I was a millionaire on paper. But, you know,
Nice.
the funny thing about that is I was television educated, bro. Everybody, listen, I didn't come from the streets. I met a lot of dudes who came from the streets, and I got mad respect for them.
Yep.
But most of the people who act like they came from the streets didn't. They're fucking full of
100%.
shit.
Yep.
Right? Now, I didn't come from the streets. I was television educated. So what I did is I didn't talk on the phone like you learn on TV. I didn't keep dope and money in the same place like
Yep.
you learn on TV. That's just the
There's
truth.
a lot of power in media. There's a whole lot of power in media.
I didn't have a bunch of gangsters telling me how to
Yep.
do. I literally I did the things I learned on television.
It worked out for a good while. It
Yeah,
seems.
well, also ultimately that's what let me win my appeal too. Later on, we'll talk about it because I never got caught with dope. I didn't get caught with cash.
That's crazy.
I didn't get caught with I had I had the businesses. I paid taxes, and a lot of the informants thought that certain things I did were dirty money, and one of the reasons why I was able to win my appeal is they were lying. They said a condo bail package that got put up was mine. It wasn't. It was somebody else's who'd had it before the conspiracy even started.
So now that we've covered most of the Thailand stuff, the last little segment of this that I wanted to do is I always like to pull some fan questions. I always like to ask the viewers, you guys out there watching at home, to ask some questions for my guests. And I got some of my favorite questions that I think I've gotten from any of the viewers so far. People were really interested in this episode. I got hundreds and hundreds of replies from people asking different questions. We're just going to get them rolling.
Let's do it.
So the first one from Shield Dude. This is just, pretty straight up. You ever have a favorite strain of weed?
I like sativa
Nice.
in the day and indica at night. Durban Poison's pretty good for me.
Nice.
And King Louis, obviously, because my name's Louis.
That's a classic. That's a classic. Do you still smoke?
Yeah, I still smoke.
Oh,
Like I
nice.
said, in the evenings, I don't have sometimes in the day. I don't have a hard and fast rule, but
Yep.
more towards the evenings.
Nice. Yeah, it's
But I do. There's nothing better than smoking weed and banging your wife or watching TV or eating. All three of those things go great with
God,
weed.
dude. As soon as we're done, I'm getting fried and I'm getting dinner.
Oh, we'll have one together. We'll burn one together.
100%. Yeah, lately we've been trying to not get age restricted here because every time I take a bong rip, they take all my ad money away.
Really?
Yeah, normally.
Even though it's legal.
Yeah. So the reason that we don't have my bongs and everything on the table right now is because every time I do it, even if I just leave it on the table and don't interact with it, not only will they take away all of our ad revenue from the episode, they'll shadow ban it. So our episode won't even get recommended to new viewers anymore. So it's like, damn, I guess we'll just smoke weed after.
Yeah, no problem.
It's tough. So the next one from Mystery Box 950, he asked, could you pull it off again today in reference to the trafficking?
Yeah, so this was all pre-September 11th, and since September 11th, there's been a lot more security. But anybody who knows anything about computer systems means they function on rules.
Yeah.
So if you can beat the algo, it's actually easier. The mouse can find its way through a maze, right? Like through trial and error. How do you beat the algo is the question, because they're no longer... The old days, you used to have to worry about random, but random is now picked by the algorithm. So if you can beat the algo, then yes. And, I don't want to give you exactly how to do it, but if you have a budget for trial and error before you're running hot, then you can figure out how to beat the algo.
Damn, yeah. So technically, in theory, as long as you've got enough of a budget, you can always make it happen. And you think you can still pull it off today?
Yeah, of course.
That was confident, yes. That was a very confident.
I just don't, it's just not, I don't have another 20 years to go away. And while I'm not,
it's a lot of time, bro.
while I never swore my life to a gang or a lifestyle, if me and you did dirt together, I'm swearing that I'm not going to rat on you.
Yeah.
And I don't have that in me anymore. So it's not right for me to participate in those things.
Hey, I mean, that's
by my own
respectable.
thinking.
You know, at least you recognize that yourself, and that's why you are the way
But to
that
say you don't think about it or figure out how to do it, that's insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a lie.
Yeah. So I think we talked a little about this earlier, but Gabe LaFlame wants to know which country produces the best MDMA.
Well, I don't think it was necessarily, for us anyway, it wasn't necessarily produced in countries. There was an oil, it started with a P. Everybody thinks it's sassafras oil, but it was several steps beyond sassafras oil. There was an oil that we used to get from the Chinese. There was really one refining crystallization process away from being MDMA. And as long as you have 3,4-methylene methamphetamine, chemically correct, the only difference is going to be the pHing, and as long as it's pH correct, it's all the same. The question is, really, are you really getting 3,4-methylene methamphetamine, which from Mexico you're not? And how are they putting anything else in there? It doesn't matter, like everybody says, oh, ecstasy is different from Molly, different from this. That's all bullshit. So ecstasy is a slang for a pill that contains MDMA.
It's just that chemical pressed into a pill. And
90% of that pill is going to be bonding agent to hold the fucking MDMA together.
Yes.
Right? Now, some people want it cut with speed. That technically would be ecstasy cut with speed, but people still call it ecstasy. Molly comes along and they say, oh, it's the same thing. It's 3,4-methylene methamphetamine. Is it in a capsule? Is it in a pill? Are you snorting it? Are you putting it up your ass? Are you swallowing it? Doesn't matter. It might enter your bloodstream faster if you snort it or put it up your ass. And if you guys are out there doing drugs and you're with girls who like cocaine, I highly recommend putting it in their ass. You'll have a much better time. If you haven't tried that,
there's a lot of people in the audience that are gonna take that advice.
If you haven't tried that, try it. Believe me, you're gonna love it.
Yeah, I remember snorting Molly was one I would never do. I hated that drip.
Yeah,
the
it's fucking
drip
horrible.
Is vile. It's awful. It's worse tasting than any other drug I've done. I think even worse tasting than Xanax, and I hate that flavor. I despise that. Okay, so it's really, I guess the answer to that question is not Mexico.
Yeah, not Mexico. And, a lot of guys, they get fucked up with these prices because they're hearing Mexico prices, which is junk. What you're getting, leaving the fentanyl aside, which is a whole different subject, but before the fentanyl, what you were getting is a little bit of heroin and a little bit of speed, or a little bit of speed, a little bit of acid, or a little bit of heroin and a little bit of acid, and they were calling it ecstasy, right? And you were getting high. So people who get high, even if they don't like the high, can't ask for their money back. So it worked for them.
Wait, so one of the cuts, they would do heroin and acid instead?
Yes.
Really?
Tiny amount.
That's great. What a cut. That's something that you would never assume. Everyone, I feel like when you hear, a fake ecstasy pill, immediately you might imagine meth, for example, I don't think there's anyone watching this, or even myself, that would guess heroin and acid.
Tiny bit of heroin and acid. Those were big. And, after we got busted, I saw other dudes coming in to the joint. So you'd get their lab analysis the same way we had ours, right?
Yep.
So you get and you see what's in there. And, most of the time there was no MDMA in there. And these are the pills that people talk about that cost 10 cents or, they're selling for $1 on the street or whatever. Like, dude, they're bunko. They're junk. They're not MDMA.
Yeah, the
in
bonding
fact,
agent might be worth more than the drugs.
MDMA today is still $25 for a 120 milligram good pill. As far as I know, the couple times I've taken it, that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's for an actual clean pill. That's what me and my friends were paying. As of a few years ago. So that sounds all right.
And
to
the
me.
street price of those are, you can, wherever you get them from, you're going to pay 50 cents or $1 in quantity to get those.
Yep.
And you're going to sell them in quantities for $5.
Yep.
And I mean 100,000 if you have quality MDMA. There's no, so all these fucking idiots who are going to come into your comments and talk about what prices they know about. You guys know about bunko shit, dude. You know, it's the same thing as like you're talking about a fucking streetwalker versus a Vienna escort.
Yep.
You're fucking, you know what you know. You don't know what you don't know.
I love that you bring that up because it's just something that I see being involved in the weed industry so much where like, for example, my brand only gas, like we'll have an ounce that's like $250 and everyone's like, well, my plug has a fucking ounce for $80. And it's like, all right, bro, that shit's mid. That's not good.
It's mids.
It applies to every market. You get what you pay for if you really want to.
It's fucking, bro. It's light depth.
Yes.
Get the fuck out. It ain't indoor, dude. Get the fuck out of here.
That fucking mixed light out of here.
Hey, they make some good light assist now.
Oh, dude, some incredible stuff.
Yeah.
I spent about a month ago. I spent a few days up in Humboldt County at one of my friends' farms, and I smoked probably the best outdoor weed I've ever smoked. That like, if you did not tell me it was outdoor, I don't think I would have guessed it at all.
Yeah.
So, and the mix, like, dude.
Especially this time of year, you can get out really the top quality outdoor.
Oh,
They just had fucking Summer Run just harvested last month, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was up there for. My buddy did a huge harvest up there, and it's a great time of year.
Yeah, so if you can cherry pick anything, you're gonna get good shit, right?
Yep, 100%.
So but that's the weed thing is exactly the same. Hey, you get what you pay for.
100%. So the next question is from Rock Dog, and Rock Dog wants to know: did you ever cut your product?
We did when customers asked for it. Like we had ravers who they got the green triangles and they wanted speed in their pills
because they want to party with.
We
that
didn't
shit.
do it ever if a customer didn't ask for it. The only thing we would ask the customers, I would ask the drag queen and the two gay dudes up north, and Tamer would ask his customers the same thing if they were buying in sufficient quantity. How many milligrams per pill you want? Because you can manipulate price a little bit like that. Do you want 80 milligram pills? Do you want 120 milligram pills? Do you want something in between? We never did the 60 milligram because we felt that was bunko.
Yeah.
We didn't think that was a fair amount, but we might give you $1 cheaper if you took 80 instead of 120, right? There was a little bit of room there.
Yeah, there was some wiggle room.
And you still, with clean ecstasy, you're going to get high on 80 milligrams.
Yeah.
You get 120, it's nicer. You can break it in half, take half, and then take another half or quarter or whatever. Just depends on at that level, what the customer wanted. But that was the only thing we ever put in it was speed. And that was only the green triangles for the raver dudes.
Yeah, so I mean, in effect, you never cut it unknowingly to the customer. You always did
never.
people right. Always did people right.
You have to.
That's respectable. That's the best way to do business.
You have to.
You can't be fucking people over. So the next question from Andrew. I think we already talked about the answer to this one too, because it's probably what you got arrested with. Most amount of drugs you've had at once.
Actually, the most amount of drugs I had at once was in court.
Really?
The government put they got one of those flatbed Costco carts, right? And they put all the drugs that they'd seized.
And they wheeled it in?
And they did it. They put it in these boxes, right? And they did it on purpose. So as they're wheeling it, 5 packs of 5,000 pills in the packs, that's how they were shipped, are falling all over the floor.
Yep.
They made that. They staged that. They could have put boxes big enough.
They set it up perfectly.
Yeah, they set it up perfectly, and they said it was all mine. It wasn't, but I got sentenced for it, and that was the largest amount I ever had on me at once. Other than that,
when they wheeled that cart into the room, did you hear the jury do like a gasp, like a...
Yeah. It was all bad.
Dude, if I was sitting there and all of a sudden the feds wheel in a giant cart of...
With fucking 5 packs spilling everywhere. And also they were all different colors and shapes, right? You have pink and blue.
Thinking, yo, can I have one?
And
please?
How many, and they're talking all the crazy shit. But, and then the most, I had 118 kilos of cocaine at one time in my possession.
That's a fuckload.
Yeah. I thought it was a lot too. That's...
Damn. That's a fucking crazy
I know
amount.
there's dudes out there who've had thousands and tons and this and that. And I'm sure they have. For me, it was 100. Now, in a week, we once shipped 300 kilos in a week, but still 118 was the most I'd ever had in my possession at one time.
Nice. That's a fuckload. So the last question I got for you, and this one was asked so frequently. This is the most asked question. I didn't even write it down because I didn't know who to source it from because everyone asked it. The most popular question that people wanted to know the answer to was, did you ever feel any like regret about selling drugs? Or did you ever feel like a moral dilemma about it?
No, I tell people I was out of my mind at that time. And what do I mean by that? Even in my first trial, my attitude was so, the smarter you are, the easier it is to manipulate people. But what most people don't realize, unless they become self-aware, is the smarter you are, the easier it is to manipulate yourself as well. Right? And for me, I was so fucking in my shit that this is the closing argument I wanted to give at my first trial where I got 30 years. All the cocaine had already beaten the DEA. It was here on the streets in California.
Yeah.
I got more cocaine out of this country than any DEA agent ever in history, still to this day. Out of the country, gone. And it already beat them. I didn't import it. Somebody else did. Customs failed. FBI failed. DEA failed. All of them failed. And I saved America by getting all this coke that had already penetrated our system out and trading it for a way better drug, ecstasy.
Nice.
That's where my head was at. Now later, like when we were talking about Thailand, obviously you realize, you think when you're, in prison, at least I did, I became self-aware. I was, I understood I re-examined many things in my life where I'd been cheered for doing something good, where I knew that simply wasn't the case. I realized that I was a bad person who did good things once in a while and not a good person who did bad things once in a while. And once you have that realization, it kind of forces other ones down the road, some unpleasant shit that you have to go through. And then by the time we got to Thailand, there was certainly that conversation that me and Tamer had where we knew that there was red ink in the ledger, right? And it was like, not to quote the Avengers, but I like the Avengers.
I did too. Cool.
And here was something at the same scale in Thailand that maybe we could balance it out a little bit. So you certainly thought about it later, but at the time, no. I was so out of my mind, I thought I was doing America a favor.
Yeah.
And it is kind of funny because it's not true. But
yeah, I think, at the end of the day, like, drugs are going to be flowing no matter who sells them. Like, people do drugs. Drugs feel good. People are going to continue to do them. And I don't necessarily view selling drugs as like a morally reprehensible, or whatever word I'm looking for. I don't view it as a bad thing unless you're cutting them and like hurting people. I think what you were doing isn't something really to feel guilty about, because you were just doing a business with a product that happened to be illegal.
Well, you look at the fentanyl thing, right?
Fent's fucked.
Well, but look at it, right? The number one, everybody out there, the number one rule of drug trafficking is you don't kill the fucking customer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, you need him to come back.
Now, let me ask you a question. What would make a Mexican drug cartel kill its lifetime customers?
Fuck. I don't know.
Now, some people will say, well, it's the dealers doing it. It's not the cartel. Well, if that was the case, the cartels would be killing the dealers because, again, you do not kill the customer.
Yep.
The only exception to that, before we get back to fent, is heroin in inner cities. They'll give a hot load, a good load, too big of a dose, a hot load, to a junkie.
Okay.
That junkie's going to OD. He might live or he might die. But then every other junkie from a 50-mile radius is going to come to buy your heroin because they want the shit that's killing people because it's strong.
Yeah, they know it's going to get them higher.
Yes.
Yep.
So but that is a tiny percentage, and it's certainly not policy to kill them, right?
Yeah.
Fentanyl, you got too many people dying. If it was the dealers cutting the shit with that and not authorized, then it would be the cartels would kill them. Well, there's two places in the world that have the kind of money to pay a Mexican drug cartel to kill its own customers. One of them is China. The other is the Middle East. The Middle East does not export that, although they're manufacturing fentanyl in Syria now.
Yeah.
That's typically not been their export. Their export is something different, and we'll leave that alone to not get into politics again right now. But China, if you look at them and the way they think about things, they feel justified because of the Opium Wars.